All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, whenever you may be watching this or wherever you may be in the world today, if you're watching live. Thanks so much for joining us. This is our monthly webinar, really focusing on how we can strengthen staff support for this back to school as well as beyond. A couple logistical things before we jump in to our content for the day. First of all, we've got a great team of experts on the line who can answer questions in the chat. So feel free to put your questions in the chat. We're going to answer just about as many as we can. We had well over 100 people register for today's webinar. If by some chance we don't get to every single question, we're not ignoring you, and so please don't be offended. We will be following up with everyone after this webinar, and any questions that you had that maybe weren't answered would be a great time for us to have that one-on-one conversation and dive into the details. We also are recording. So if as a former educator, you get someone to come knock on your door, you have to take that conversation. We got you covered. We'll be sending out this recording in the next day or two, so that way you can rewatch if there were any parts that you missed, any especially interesting parts that you want to re-listen to. And of course, you can also share this within your organization. We love it when people come in and think about how to better strengthen staff support, because that's really key for educator success. So with that said, really look forward to spending the next 45 minutes together with folks and diving in to talk about staff support. So just in terms of our presenters for today, I'm very honored to have the talented Sean Cobby with him. You know him from some bits, maybe from conferences, maybe even working with your district. He is our Vice President of Support Services here at MBA. So really excited to learn from his expertise. I've also got Dan Yenchar on the line. He is our Customer Solutions Specialist, also with Marcia Brenner Associates, who's going to be able to dive in and actually show us some of the workflows that we can leverage to strengthen staff support. And then I'm your host, your moderator for the day, Sam Sale. Really excited to help kind of guide us through this journey as we think about the personalized approach, because every school and district is different. So the personalized approach that we can take to ensure that our new teachers, our veteran teachers, maybe our 40-year teachers, and even all administrators are able to get that personalized support that they need. Now, I do like to really quickly on all these webinars, and if you joined 2 weeks ago to see translation services, this next slide is a duplicate. You'll see this a lot because this is something we're really proud of. It's Marcia Brenner's commitment to helping schools, districts, even states, and schools around the world with getting the most out of their technology. That really comes from that unmatched expertise. You do something for 40 years, you get pretty daggone good at it. That relationship first approach. So a lot of what we'll be talking about today all starts with your needs and making sure that it's personalized to what you need and not just what we tell you need. And of course, proven results. We have lots of customers around the world who leverage MBA plugins, services, PD, training, et cetera, to really get the most out of their technology. And so we always like to connect with these educators and to continue to make sure that what we're building is meeting their needs and is going to give them those proven results that they've come to expect and rely on. So today we are talking about staff support. Before we kind of dive in with my guest, I just always like to highlight staff support really does matter. As many of us, we're coming out of the classroom. Of course, many of you all are within a school or within a district. This is a no-brainer, but it always is good to kind of see that cited stats for why staff support matters. If educators are supported, students have better outcomes, the quality of instruction is better, the overall classroom experience is better. However, a lot of teachers don't get that full level of support they need, and that can create a lot of work-related stress. There's a 2024 survey where 84%, so the lion's share by far, are experiencing that work-related stress. So what can we do to take things off their plate, make it easier for them to get the support, the answers that they need, whether they're a teacher, a superintendent, or anyone in between? And this is the last stat here. This is not a COVID stat. Like, hey, teachers were really stressed during COVID. Of course they were. This is from 2024, where we saw in a recent study where 1 in 5 educators are considering leaving not just their district, but the profession in the next few years. So how can we reverse that trend, giving them better support so they're not out looking to go to a different industry? And honestly, for folks who maybe retire or who that's just the right move for, when we bring in good teachers, how can we take good teachers to being great teachers as quickly as possible by removing some of the obstacles? And so that's what we're going to look at today. The first kind of lens we're going to look at it through is through organization-wide support. So I'm going to invite Dan Yenchar, our MBA specialist, on to talk a little bit about exactly how for every single staff member, teacher, nurse, principal, et cetera, how they can get that support through a brand new product that we have pretty recently known as MB Assist. So Dan, I will advance the slides for you and toss it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sam. Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Yenchar. I worked in Michigan schools for many years as a PowerSchool admin before coming to MBA. I've been at MBA for almost 5 years now. Um, so one thing I wanted to touch on before I get into the slides is I have a little practice for you. I see a lot of familiar names out there. I see a lot of tech folks, HR folks, even some transportation people. Thank you all for joining today. But I want to just imagine for a moment the most common questions that you all get asked in a day or a week, right, by your peers or your subordinates. When you're asked these common questions, right, what are your steps that you respond with? Are you attaching documentation? How much time do you spend on these things? So go ahead. I just wanted to get their creative juices flowing here, and then we'll head into the slides. So what is MB Assist? MB Assist is an always on, right? 24 hours a day, AI assistant trained in your organization's approved policies, handbooks, and internal resources. It provides consistent self-service support for staff, right? Staff, I'll show you how it works. They hop right in, they ask their questions. This reduces daily interruptions for the leaders out there, right? How many times are you answering those questions and all that time you put forth in doing so? MB Assist allows administrators to upload documents to map to a Google Drive, a OneDrive, a SharePoint. Again, the whole point of this is a closed AI network, right? So the MB Assist is only looking at your documents that you've provided to give those answers. Go ahead, Sam. Thanks. So, what are the key benefits of MB Assist? Staff can get reliable answers on their own, right? Reducing repetitive questions, shortening those response times from your administrators, and ultimately freeing up that administrative time to focus on higher value work. When you add up all those hours a day that you're answering those repetitive questions, how much time is that? MB Assist provides instant support by responding only with up-to-date information sourced directly, again, from your documents that you're telling MB Assist to look at to answer those questions, right? So it's going to use your handbook verbiage, your exact policies. Schools and districts can create assistants by department or site and control who sees what while delivering relevant role appropriate guidance. So as I take control here, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to dive into the end user experience of MB Assist. But again, as you're thinking about those questions, if you'd feel free to put some of those common questions that you just thought about into chat, and I'm going to take control of the screen here. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, while you do that, Dan, I know the big question I always had. Well, I had both my kiddos while I was teaching, and so one of the big questions was around what do I get for leave? What happens if I have additional ones? I know that was a big question for me that I asked over and over, and really had to dig around and get the right person because I started getting different answers from different people. What is the source of truth, and how can we get folks to that source of truth as quickly as possible?
That's absolutely right, Sam. So here I am in the end user experience for MB Assist. I have a couple of assistants that the rights have been given to me to use. I have an HR assistant to use. I have a professional training assistant to use. So, you can customize this screen here with up to 6 questions. So as you think about those 6 commonly asked questions, I can quickly put them here. How do I submit expenses, right? I travel every 4 to 6 months for MBA. I always forget how to submit expenses. I have to go dig through all our documents and emails and try to find the document to use. I can just click here and it'll bring that up for you. I know a lot of us in different roles are given additional responsibilities, right? Things like, hey, I'm now the McKinney-Vento specialist, or I'm now the Title IX coordinator, right? All of a sudden, it's just been dumped on my lap. So with your resources, again, your handbooks and your verbiage tied to this, I can come in, you can click on a question, I can ask a question with a microphone, or I can type in. But, what is step 3 in the Title IX process? So what MB Assist is doing here, it's going and scouring your documents. This is ultimately built for your employee support because they're going to get the verbiage from your handbook. It provides policy-based answers. So here we are. Here's step 3 in the Title IX process right here for me. Another wonderful feature that it shows is the source document that it's pulling from. For me, it's pulling from a handbook. It's pulling from page 48 on that handbook. I can click on that and it'll open in a new tab in a new document that those relevant resources for step 3 of the Title IX process. Another nice feature here is I can say, okay, that's step 3. What is step 4? It knows that I'm referencing against the Title IX process here. So I just type something like step 4 and it'll go out and it'll find step 4 for me. And again, this is providing based on your company's verbiage, right? So here's step 4, pulling right from it. Now, my favorite feature of all of this functionality is I can speak Spanish to this en español. So now all my source documents are in English, right? I don't have any Spanish documents in my source folders here. So this is going out and it's using the translation. It'll translate it. You know, a lot of our more of our end users, more and more, are native Spanish speakers or other languages. And maybe when we get into these technical documents, they'd like to see it in their native tongue, right? So here it is. It just gave it to me in Spanish. So I like to show that. I think that's really powerful. Um, I'm going to navigate to the professional development portion of this. So recently, we had a speaker come in and talk about leadership. You know how PD in schools, this was recorded. So you can put all of your recordings in here. So as I come in and I'm going to ask it a question here. What are the 7 steps to leadership? So this particular presenter was talking about leadership. With this will timestamp the video for your question and it'll link to the video to find those answers for you. So you think about all of your PD, excellent PD resources. So here it found this video for me, the steps on how to develop leadership skills, and it'll timestamp each step here. So if I want to see step 2, it'll take me right to the 1 minute 17 mark of that video. So as you have end users accessing PD for certain things, they can just ask a very generic question like that. What are the 7 steps, right? And it's going to bring all that information up for them. So I think that's very powerful. Another thing I wanted to share is because this is tied to your documentation, if I ask it a question that it doesn't know the answer to. So how much wood could a woodchuck chuck? Right? Just a silly question. Now, I don't believe anything in my resource documentation is going to show an answer to this. So you guys customize the verbiage here, but ultimately, if you're, it's going to say, hey, thank you for your question. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer to this. Now, why this is so important is that because MB Assist will only answer questions from the source documentation that you provided to it. If a question is asked that has no supporting documentation, it's going to give this customized answer here. This means that the MB Assist is a closed AI environment, right? It will not make up an answer for you. And I just want to reiterate that MB Assist will give you the answer, right? The board approved answer. It's going to give you the answer, not just an answer. And this ultimately builds it builds trust, employee trust in the system and what you've developed. So I'm going to navigate now to the administrator side of MB Assist. And what I have here on the left-hand panel, you'll see a list of all the assistants that I've created for the school district. So I have a training assistant that I had access to where I asked those leadership questions, right? Or ask PD video questions. Or maybe, I'm a new 3rd grade teacher and I need to teach algebra. Do you have any algebra videos, right? Stuff like that. I mean, resources that all of your staff can use. I've also created a technology assistant. This to ask tech questions. Yeah. So I was a former tech person, right? Like, what is the IP address to the printer in the special ed workroom? I could never find that when I needed to find a new computer, set up a new computer, right? So this is going to source all of your documents, complex stuff like that. Or how do I sync a certain vendor with PowerSchool? It'll retrieve that information. Complex technical documents can be easily retrieved with MB Assist. Each assistant listed here has its own set of documents from which users can ask questions against, and each assistant has its own set of users. So users can be invited to join multiple assistants, and you can also create as many assistants as you'd like. So let's take a deep dive. I'll show you how easy it is to create an assistant. You're just simply going to come over here, add assistant. We'll name this one webinar, create it. It's going to populate in the left-hand side over here. See webinar. It's going to tell you what role you are, whether you're a manager, an admin, or a user. We'll talk more about roles in a moment here. But then I just simply come down. If I want to delete it, I can come down and delete it. And it's gone. So it's really easy to create these assistants. I'm going to briefly go over the icons on the left panel here. Each assistant does have its own dashboard. The dashboard displays everything the admin has access to for the assistant. And then chat is where all the admins will go to chat, right? I showed you on the previous one, the end user experience. The administrators also have that chat here as well. So, administrators can use the chat feature. I'm going to spend some time going through these admin settings here. So admin settings show here in the middle. They also show in the bottom left. So statistics, we talk about statistics real quick. This is where an administrator or manager can review present or past questions and answers. They can go back daily, weekly, monthly. I can see user management. So as an administrator, I can see all the roles, all the invited users, all the people that I've changed roles and things for. Invite links here. So the invite link is an administrator uses the invite link when they want to send an invite in a personal email, right? So I can just copy this link to the chat bot. Dark theme is just that, change it from dark mode to light mode. Customization. This is where this allows the admin or manager to customize their assistant with a name, a description, or a logo if they'd like. The chat dashboard, this is where I can customize those 6 questions and ultimately a negative answer. So maybe my HR negative answer is something very generic, but my technical services one is say, hey, if you didn't get the answer you're looking for, please submit a help desk ticket to Sam Sale at schoolsupport.com, right? So you can customize these negative answers for each individual assistant that you've created. So now that we've created your assistant, we've named it, and I'll teach you how to upload your files into it. So you can, let's head to the HR here. If I want to add files, I can already see the files that I have in use here. I can search by certain file types as well. If I want to search by PDF or something like that, I can do that. I can see the statuses of them. If I want to check, see how old some of my stuff is, I could choose oldest first, right? So you can do some filtering here. But it's super easy. MBSS is super easy. I can drag and drop files here. I can select files. So I'm going to come grab my handbook here. I can choose, many files at once if I'd like. I say upload file. Now, what we're doing here is MB Assist is going through the process where the AI converts it into what it needs to understand, right? So, and it's already done. So it took it just a fraction of seconds. Now it's ready to use. So it's already set up to ask questions against now. So it's that simple. If I want to map a drive to it, again, a Google Drive, a OneDrive, a SharePoint, I come to add a source here, and I'm going to choose, name my drive. I can physically map it here, manually map it, or copy the URL, and it's that easy to map a drive to it. I do want to say if you do revise the documents inside of those drive folders, you can just come out here and say, hey, refresh, right? So if you're changing a lot of your documents in your Google Drive all the time, you can come out to here and just say refresh, and it'll refresh that data for you. So now I'm going to look at the admin dashboard, and I want to look at statistics, if I could speak specifically statistics. We'll take a deep dive into those. So what I'm doing here is from the bottom nav here, I'm heading to assist statistics. And let's pick our questions for the last week or so. So this is going to show me Natively, it's going to give me three columns. It's going to show me the answers, the email, and the questions. So you can choose other columns to display as well. Most importantly here, you can find out what's getting those negative answers, right? So if I'm getting those negative answers, maybe I need to change my documentation, reword some things, something like that. So this is important for your administrators to come in, take a look against, make sure their verbiage is following the questions that are being asked. And quickly here, I just want to show you, I can look at negative responses. I can look at the questions in the email, in the answer if I'd like. But ultimately here, I'm just looking for a negative response. So here's a negative response. It looks like Dan Yenchar said, how much does the moon weigh? Well, I don't have that information, right? It looks like down here, um, what was step three in the title process? This was a negative response because he was asking the wrong assistant, the HR assistant, instead of the PD assistant, right? So you can see what's going on inside of your data. You can also turn this information into cool little line graphs, bar graphs, and pie charts. So I do like to show that. I think it's pretty powerful. Another thing I want to talk about real quickly is the roles. So there's the administrator role. I went through everything that the admin has access to. I showed you the end user side where it's virtually just asking questions, right? They can see the questions they've asked and ask questions of the AI. But there is a role called a manager. Manager's the middleman. The manager dashboard is similar to the admin dashboard. It's limited to statistics and managing files. The manager cannot invite or delete users or create or delete an assistant. So a manager is just meant to manage the files on the MB Assist. So I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to take a look at it today. It was great to show it. I mean, my brain just explodes with ideas for MB Assist, especially from an old tech guy, right? With all the documents I had all over the place. I'm going to go hop into the chat and start answering questions though, but I want everyone to know your customer solution specialist will be reaching out to you with a link to the recording and we'll get back to you right away. Thanks again, everyone, for your time.
Oh, thank you, Dan. That would have been such a game changer. Just as a former educator, I'm thinking of all the different ways. Like we had a lot of documentation on this is how we use Moodle, this is how we use Google, this is how we like we had so much
Exactly.
of our documents, not to mention the videos and taking you right there. And you made a great point too. If you're continuing to get those negative answers on a specific area, why is that? Is there something maybe within your documentation that could be made a little bit more clear? So it almost helps you audit that a little bit as well. So many
Absolutely.
ways to get, I think, really started with AI in a safe, simple way to really promote how you're using it responsibly, but really keeping humans in that center of the loop within a school, a district, and at the end of the day, helping teachers get answers now and not, 36 hours from now. So
Absolutely.
um, perfect. Well, I'm going to jump right now into, we kind of look, that's for the masses, all the different departments, literally any employee. I'm going to get really admin specific now and not a better person to jump in and really help me with this than our VP of Support Services. As mentioned, you know him from some bits, you know him from conferences, you maybe have worked directly with him within your district or your organization. Sean, thank you so much for joining us today, sir.
My pleasure. What an introduction. I didn't realize I was in so many people's faces in so many different ways.
Oh, I could be like a boxing in like the Sultan of SWAT, like you could be like Apollo Creed. Well, Sean, for folks who maybe don't know you, I'd love to just kind of start with a little bit of intro, how long you've been
Sure.
with MBA, stuff like that, so folks know who they're talking to next time they see a quasi celebrity out there.
Absolutely. My name's Sean Cobby, VP of Support Services. I've been with MBA for 6 years. Started in January of 2020, right before COVID happened. So, one little fun quip is, when everybody else started going back to the office, people asked me when I was going to head back and said, no, I was remote from day one. So I get to stay in my little basement, my little dungeon. But previous to working for MBA, I did work for our local school district for 15 years. I was a PowerSchool administrator there. Been in this PowerSchool world for actually 20 years now. So 2006 is when we implemented. So definitely been around PowerSchool for a minute or two.
Well, I found the right guy to talk to then. Sounds like you know it backwards and forwards. So, Sean, you've been through a lot of back to schools, both as a administrator as well as within your current role. So, really to dive in, like when we're thinking about back to school,
Sure.
What are some of those stress points that you see that can maybe create bumps, derail teams, and how does MBA services really help partner to
Yeah.
stop those fires before they get out of control?
Yeah, so honestly, thinking back in when I was a PowerSchool admin, and even since I've been with MBA, kind of those areas that pop up and seem to be kind of pain points for everyone. It's more kind of time based in my brain. I think of when you do the rollover. Whether it's once you move over, if you're dealing with high schools, you're dealing with now the live site scheduling pieces. You're dealing with your calendar setup, bell schedule changes, that fun process of storing class rank. The list of items that typically end up having to happen with a PowerSchool instance right after rollover just seems to get longer and longer every year. And then the other time frame that I think of is, right when usually those teachers come back that day or two before school starts, before the students are there. So now they're looking at their schedules. Is there any type of training that needs to happen for the teachers? Also think of, day one for the students, all those student schedule changes. So, I mean, there are a million pain points that pop up, but they seem to kind of be based around those kind of key time frames.
No, that's such a good point. Because yeah, it's almost like because you bring up rollover. It's almost like you're a baseball manager and you're managing a game in the ninth inning and the first inning at the same time, and you can't
Absolutely.
really get to the first inning till the ninth inning's done, but you have to plan for it. It's so many pieces to kind of juggle. I think another piece of that is thinking about new staff, and we know that there are teaching shortages. We've seen a dip in people going to education specific programs to become teachers. So when we think of MBA is kind of an extension of the district team. Like, what does that look like, and how can that maybe help alleviate some of the pain that districts might be feeling if it's staffing shortages and turnovers are kind of a little bit of a creating a little bit
Yeah.
of a bumpy road?
Absolutely. New staff is always a pain point, and kind of back to your point when you first started, you know, teachers are moving. They're either moving districts or they're moving out of the profession. So we're pulling in new teachers. It's not just new teachers, it's new admin staff too. So if anybody on this webinar has been around PowerSchool for a number of years, you can understand and feel the pain of understanding processes. So that training of new staff is huge. And sometimes you're getting a new staff member that was in charge of the training. So now you need somebody like us to kind of come in and pull those reins in and do that training for you. We've seen that quite a bit. Um, Kind of the other pieces of what you get out of kind of that admin support plan is that constant touch. We have recurring support calls with you. We have, make sure we're on top of what the current issues are. Oh, well, I forgot we needed to hire this new staff member or this new role. How do we handle the training of that staff member too?
And I'm really glad you brought up the admin support plans. As an educator, I didn't see those, but I just knew that, hey, some of my admin are really, just seem to know exactly what's going on, and others maybe need a little bit of support to get to that level. So I thought for maybe new folks on the call, like just break it down
Yeah.
for us. Like kind of what is an admin support plan? And how do you see it really kind of fitting into peak seasons for schools and what sort of
Yeah.
work does your team do for those individuals?
I mean, I'll be the first to admit, and that's part of the reason we've kind of developed these admin support plans is, that 15 years that I was at a district. If I would have known that there was a support team out there that was capable of speaking the same language and being able to help me through problems, honestly, kind of at a higher level, then, I don't want to necessarily wait for a support ticket to go through and get a response. So if I would have known or had a resource like MBA when I was the PowerSchool administrator, it would have made my days go a lot smoother. You kind of talk about the peak season and those things that come up right at the beginning of the year: enrollment, Power Teacher Pro issues, staff access. Security is a big thing right now. So thinking about Whether it's like I need somebody to help me look at my security, let's do a security audit. And actually, like, I have this new staff member, they're not seeing what they need to see. So let's sit down and figure out how to get them the access they need.
And I think you really touched on a lot of my next question. A lot of those, like areas where we see things break down. Maybe it's new hires. Maybe it's, kind of a little bit of a security audit. Any other big system process kind of breakdown points of failure, whether that's single point of failure or just some of those common areas that you see that your team's support model kind of steps in to help kind of almost bring that boil down to a slow simmer, if you will.
Yeah. So one term that you kind of used in there that I find really interesting is common, right? What is common?
Right.
We've been doing admin support plans, with me at the helm for 5, 6 years now. And I will tell you that it is very difficult to point a finger at what is common.
Yep.
And that's why we've kind of built our admin support plans and our customization service plans around being able to meet districts where they are. Um, it's everybody's PowerSchool instance is as unique as the person that's running it. So meeting them where they're at and finding out what their pain points are is really step number one, right? And instead of thinking about, bringing our common ideals of what a problem is, let's have the conversation to see what you need and let's solve those.
No, and I think that's a great point. The uniqueness of each school, each district. That really gets back to one thing I kind of led with of that relationship first approach. Where are you today, and how can we help you take that next step? And especially, because every SIS instance is unique. What
Yeah.
happens if you're the new SIS administrator who took over, and so you're getting to kind of see someone else's fingerprints and working to understand, okay, what the heck did they do to get us to where we are, and how can I
Right.
continue to serve the students moving forward? Um, so I think a lot of this is starting to touch on customization. So let's kind
Yeah.
of shift a little bit in the second half of our conversation. When it comes to some of the customizations that we do for PowerSchool, I'd love to hear some examples of things that you all have built,
Yeah.
customized, personalized to save staff time, to reduce errors, things like that, and really how those educational leaders know that the customization is getting that targeted vision that they're going after.
Yeah, I'm actually going to take a half a step back because one of the things that you mentioned was what if I'm the new PowerSchool administrator? Well, that could come in two different ways. Either you're new to PowerSchool or you have PowerSchool experience and you're new to this instance. One of the things that we've seen a really big increase on from the customization service plan perspective is a customization audit. If you've never been in PowerSchool before and you're coming into a PowerSchool instance that's, maybe been around for 15, 20 years, there's a good chance there's a number of customizations in there. And if this is the first time you're seeing PowerSchool, you have no idea that that's custom versus what core PowerSchool is. So I see that customization audit being a kind of a big tool for a new PowerSchool admin. But specifically around customizations, ones that we've built, if anybody's ever been out to our website, if you haven't been out there in a couple of years, we kind of have this new item at the top, our self-service plugins. That actually one of our self-service plugins was the blanket attendance report. That legitimately started out as just a customization for a single district. From our perspective, it was basically built for an Indiana district because Indiana changed kind of the rules around what present as far as attendance was actually counted as. It couldn't just be blank. So we all know core PowerSchool, a present attendance day is basically just no record. So how do you find something that doesn't exist? So that was kind of the idea of what the blank attendance report was. It has obviously grown into something we realized a lot of districts needed access to. So that became actually our first self-service plugin. Other customizations that we've built that come to mind, Power Queries. We all have integrations that go to other third-party systems. Not always are you going to be able to just keep up on flat file submissions into this third party. So being able to leverage a Power Query and maybe nobody in your staff knows SQL or knows how to build a Power Query. It's definitely something we do quite a bit of. Generally speaking, custom reports. Everybody knows PowerSchool has a ton of data. It's where all of our data lives. But how do we view it? How do we see it? If you have an idea of what a report would look like, good chances are we could build it for you. Another big one that kind of recently happened, one of my senior customization developer kind of took this on, ended up being pretty large project, but it was for a district in Michigan, and they were basically finding a pain point of allowing teachers to enter in accommodations, and being able to track accommodations. So again, not something that PowerSchool core necessarily has. So we've worked a lot with that district, figured out what they needed, and now their teachers actually have a place inside of PowerSchool to enter in and track their accommodations. So those are just a few that
No,
come.
that would have been such a game changer because so much of that's done paper, pencil, Word
Yeah,
documents, and at the end of the day, like it just lacks that visibility into like, hey, is this accommodation working? Like, and having that kind of that blind eye there, it is personally not what's best for the child, in my opinion. So yeah, no, I'm really interested in learning more about that one offline. But, I think I have two last questions for you, and then we
yeah,
have a couple of questions that we'll answer live as well at the end. But
sure.
when we think about like short term, hey, we need this support right now versus ongoing support, what are some different ways to engage with MBA services team, and how would you kind of help make sure we're matching people to the right, because budget is key, like matching
Absolutely.
people to the right short term versus long term kind of service and support model?
Yeah, absolutely. This is another example of, kind of the importance of how we customize our support plans. We definitely have customers that have both an admin support plan for that core PowerSchool support and have needs for customization. So we can combine those and basically build a whole plan for you. For admin plans specifically, we look at really like what you need. And as far as like that kind of first step of talking to us, all we need to hear from you is what are your pain points, right? Um, so once we know what those pain points are, we talk with that or talk through that with you and figure out what the best plan of attack is. We have some districts where, and we talk about like what's the biggest impact too, right? So we have some districts where maybe that 10-year-old customization all of a sudden broke. That may be a fairly small fix, but the impact of that is huge because
Mhm.
maybe for the last 10 years, your staff is seeing that screen every day. We need that to work. Whereas we also may have districts moving from log entries to incident management. That's a much larger project potentially, but could still have the same amount of impact as maybe that small project. So really just meeting you where you're at is, not to sound like a broken record, but that's really the power of what we do from our services perspective.
Yeah. No, and that's key. And I don't think we can say that enough. Is under like while we're talking at a high level around these, it really all starts with the unique things that make your district who they are, or your school, of course, if it's a private
Absolutely.
school, the demographics, the resources, the time that you have, not just resources, budget, people, time. Like
Yeah,
what
Sam,
what are you
I
able
do
to
want to
bring on?
mention as well, like, when I say that we've been there, out of everyone on our team, every single one of them was a PowerSchool administrator from the admin support plan team. Every single one of them was a PowerSchool administrator at their district.
Yeah.
I think the least experienced person we have on our team has been in PowerSchool for, a decade, for 10 years, almost 10 years, all the way up to, 20 years ish. So when we say that we've been there, we've been there. We've been in
Yep.
your shoes. We understand how difficult it is to make the decisions of day to day, whether it's, process changes, setup changes in PowerSchool. We love having those conversations with our customers.
No, huge for credibility and for knowing what's at stake. Because I feel like sometimes when people don't know what your role really takes, and they're like, "Oh, why don't you just do this?" without thinking of the effects, that's when things can really go sideways. So yeah, so kind of last question, as we're thinking about back to school, maybe people have use it or lose it funds, or are waiting on that July budget to open up, but really just in terms of getting engaged with services, a smoother back to school, fall 2027 beyond. How do you recommend? Where should they start? What should they do to get kind of engaged with services? What should they have ready if they're going to schedule that initial conversation with your team, et cetera?
Yeah, whether it's a conversation with Elizabeth Moore, kind of the coordinator for admin support plans, or Debbie Davila, the manager for customization service plans, bringing those pain points, having those pain points kind of identified, bringing those to us. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is, our hourly service plans or support plans. Those hours are good for 1 year. So even if you have that small project in mind, great. Let's buy a package of hours, because we all know how the school year goes. Something's going to come up throughout your year. Be prepared for that. We know how hard it is to get, ad hoc funding, right? Like, oh, something happened, now I need to go get funding now. Let's make a plan for that. So now we have hours kind of waiting for that next time you need us. So the reason we kind of plan those out for a year is, when you think about, we talked about rollover. That's the start of the yearly process, right? So rollover, start of year, end of quarter, store and grades, end of semester. What about snow days, calendar changes, all of the fun things that can come up in your PowerSchool instance over the course of
compliance reporting, probably, like with the
Absolutely.
changes from the state. Yeah, I mean, the list goes on and on. But
Absolutely.
perfect. Well, Sean, I always learn something new from you as well, and I really appreciate your support. Please hang out for a second in case other questions come in. I think most of the questions I saw were around the MB Assist and how that works. So, Dan, I'm going to ask you to come back on if you don't mind, sir, because we did have one question I think we want to kind of answer live. There was a question like, okay, the Google Documents and SharePoint, OneDrive, and file upload, that looks great. What if we have websites and things like that we want it to pull answers from? Like, what are the controls that we can apply so it's not going to the entire web, but using quality approved information on your website?
Correct. You can link it to connect to specific sites or certain pages into the MB Assist.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I think, we kind of highlighted that, but yeah, so if you've got your site that has a lot of that information that you may want, calendars, announcements, et cetera, can also be one of those resources that it's specifically pulling from. And then I can do the light lifting on the last question here that I think we want to answer. You did a great job showing how those documents could be put into Spanish. Who translated it? Where did it come from? So for those of you who were on 2 weeks ago, when we did the translation services webinar, we leveraged AWS and their translation services to actually do those translations. That's the same thing we're doing here. So what Dan showed that in Espanol, that immediately was translated that way, leveraging AWS. So very trusted. We can share more information on all the languages and things like that that are available. But that's the source, the trusted source of those translations. So I will check the Q&A one more time just to see if anything else came in, which I'm not seeing anything. So as mentioned, we'll be following up, making sure all questions are answered. And if you have things that maybe you think of, a couple of days from now, driving home, don't worry, we'll have that time to reach out and to get questions answered. Dan and Sean, first of all, thank you guys for presenting. But even more importantly, thank you all for attending. We had, like I said, well over 100 folks thinking about how they can elevate staff support, get things going smoothly for the masses, as well as for their administrators, because that is really key to a successful school year, a successful back to school, and successful student progress for those individuals that you serve within your school, your district, even your state. So we look forward to hearing your questions in our follow-up. And just once again, thank you so much. Have a smooth back to school, hopefully a relaxing summer, and we'll be seeing you on the next webinar series. Thanks so much,
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Sam.